I've worked for over 20 years. Like I did at least 40-hour work weeks for a long time. Sometimes like a 50-hour work week, sometimes 60-hour work weeks. And then my first wife passed away in 2013, and I got a survivor's pension as a result of that, right? Well, because I'm on disability, the government turns around and says, well, now that you had your wife pass away, you've got this bonus money that is extra, so you don't really deserve it. So we're just going to claw it back off your disability check. And it's like, well, to me that doesn't make sense, because it's money that I work for. I mean, like I said, I've worked for 20 years, and I paid into it, or actually my wife paid into it. My late wife did. And it's like, well, that's an employment benefit, or that's an employment privilege that everybody should get, whether you're able-bodied or disabled. But yet the provincial government says, you know, if you're disabled and on disability, we're just going to axe that money off because it's a wonderful bonus that your wife passed away. You know, there seems to be this idea that, again, not to pick on government or the higher ups or whatever, but there seems to be this idea that if you discriminate against, minority groups like people with disabilities or people that are on social assistance, if you discriminate against everybody equally, or if you treat everybody as badly, the same, like badly, that somehow that's not discrimination anymore. I mean, it's going to sound sarcastic, and when I say it, but as a person, like for me personally, it just comes across this way. So it's like the provincial government saying, you know, congratulations on the death of your wife. And I know that sounds sarcastic, but that's what it comes across like that, right? It's like, congratulations on the death of your wife. We'll now take, we'll minus some money away from your disability check now. And it's like, isn't this a wonderful bonus that you got all this extra money now? Congratulations, and it's just so perverse, right? And I know that's not what the government's actually saying, but it comes across that way, right? And it's just so perverse. And I've gone to human rights tribunals, the one in BC here. I've gone to them about 3 or 4 times now, and just the way even the tribunal, they're supposed to stick up for you and they're supposed to like advocate for stuff like that, but I actually had one of the chairs told me to my face, it's like, well, it's not discrimination if we discriminate against everybody equally. If it's equally applied discrimination, it's not discrimination. And they actually said that to my face, and they believe it. The reason why the government can get away with what they're doing with clawbacks and stuff is because the way social assistance is set up, it's set up as income of last resort. That's their get out of jail free card, where they can kind of basically do anything with impunity and say, well, we can abuse and misuse any way we want because it's income of last resort. So we can claw back Neil's survivor's pension as unearned income because it's income of last resort. So they just have all these like I call them pink unicorns, where they just make all these exceptions to the rule and say, well, now this earned income that was an earned income privilege is now a pink unicorn because it's income of last resort, and it's just, I think it's just perverse, really, really perverse government policy that they can get away with that kind of stuff. You want a policy to make sense. Like, it has to make logical sense, right? And like, you can just say, well, a clawback's a clawback, what's the big deal? But the problem is when the government says we'll allow $15,000 of exempt income every year. They say it used to be like $1,000 a month, and they've increased it to $15,000 for the year. When they say you can have exempt income of $15,000 for the year, but then they turn around and say, you know what? If you have your spouse die, I'm sorry, we're not going to cover that. I mean, that does not make sense. Like, how can you be so perverse and punishing and say we'll allow $15,000 of exempt income? I can't even say exempt. Sorry, but then say, you know, your SOL if your spouse dies. Sorry, we're not gonna cover that. And I mean, the government's famous for saying things like wraparound supports and and all that kind of stuff, like you know, targeted incomes and wraparound. Well, what do you think what do you think a survivor's pension is? A survivor's pension is a targeted support. It's a wraparound support, and so they're perpetuating their own arguments of, like, you know, let's have a wraparound support. Let's do a targeted income. Well, that's exactly what a survivor's pension is. That's exactly what a WCB claim is. That's exactly what a veteran's pension is, or whatever. And they just say, you know what, we're going to just invalidate it, and it doesn't matter. You know, to heck with all, like, targeted incomes, to heck with all the wraparound supports. Your wraparound support of your survivor's pension doesn't matter, and that to me is just crazy. It doesn't make logical. There's no logical sense there. There's a complete gap in logic. Brent knows that I call the clawbacks the pink the pink unicorns, I call them.
Yeah,
and
they're magical.
Peter, you were calling about nobody has a magic wand, and I call the clawbacks the pink unicorn all the time when I write emails to the provincial government here. And because I have my survivor's pension clawed back like every month for the last 10 years almost, and I'm saying, well, you've turned a earned income privilege of a survivor's pension. You've turned an earned income privilege into a pink unicorn, where it's just poof, it's gone. It doesn't amount to anything. It doesn't count. We're just gonna, like, invalidate it. And I said, well, that's what you're doing. You're turning it into a pink unicorn, and that's not right.
Yeah, that's the CPPD.
Yeah, completely agree. This is. I mean, we need to be treating people with disabilities with respect, and these are all problems that are in the existing system.
I think it's because they say it's income of last resort, right? The whole thing is income of last resort, so that kind of gives them free reign to do whatever they want. But my point is that a pension is, by its own DNA, it's supposed to be a protected income source. Any pension, pension is that, right? Like, for me, I mean, I don't know if you know about this bit about me, Dan, but I have been fighting the clawback to my survivor's pension for almost 10 years now. My first wife passed away, and they just invalidated it completely. And it's like, why? And like you were talking about, other ministries being responsible for different pieces of legislation. And if we take the Ministry of Labor, for example, the BC Ministry of Labor, I mean, there's so much legislation in there that protects pensions, right? I mean, they protect pensions like there's no, like, everybody's business. It's just like they protect it like tooth and nail. And yet, you take the pension over to the Ministry of Disabilities or the Ministry of Social Development, and they disrespect it, and then they claw it back. And it's like, how can you do that? Just from one ministry it's protected, and the other ministry they cross it over, and it's like, sorry, we're going to disrespect it now. And it's like, why? Well, I don't understand that. I just don't understand it.
Yeah, and you're spot on, Neil, and sorry about all the circumstances, obviously, and my condolences to you. That's just one of many absurdities that are happening. And
well, yeah, I mean, you and I have talked about this too, Brent, just recently, when the at the last election on 2017, and everybody and their dog, remember I was telling you, everybody and their dog in the NDP caucus was saying the first thing to do when we get if we get elected and we get into office, we're gonna remove all the clawbacks. We're gonna take away all the clawbacks. And it wasn't just Horgan saying it. It wasn't just one or two MLAs saying it. It was everybody and their dog was saying it, right? And and I went to Harry Bain's office here in Newton. Like I sat across from at his desk, like I was basically, an arm's length away from the guy. I was sitting at his desk and giving him the whole rundown of the clawback of my survivor's pension. He says, first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove all the clawbacks. And everybody and their dog was saying it. Literally everybody and their dog was saying it. And what happens when they get elected? Like nothing. It's just like they all have amnesia. It's like, what? We didn't say that, did we?
That's why you send an email and get it in writing.
It's just crazy.
But it's also with Paul to the Thessalonians, as one minister was saying, it's like the Thessalonians were actually given the charge of taking care of people with disabilities. So that was actually what they were supposed to be doing. And a lot of them had gotten into their heads two things. One, that kind of thing back in the Roman age where you kind of see those pictures of it where like guys are just kind of lounging around and like talking and stuff like that. Some of them had started doing that. And Paul's like, come on, guys, there's people to take care of here. And the other one was that somebody told them that Jesus is coming back any minute now. So they're like, oh, we'll just wait. It's like, no.
Show me the money.
So that means you don't have to do anything, right? We'll just wait for him to show up.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't Mike, you at Tim Hortons get back to work. It wasn't that. Yeah. But there's so many other ones that, and there's other supporting ones, like how there was one, I think it was Paul to the Corinthians later on. He's like talking about like, a blessing and abundance, and I'm like, well, exactly. Do you think God would have given us a God? Okay, for the Christians out there, do you think God gives us a world of scarcity and tight-fistedness, or grace and abundance? Careful, he's listening.
Yeah.
Like, Neil, like, poverty doesn't need to exist in Canada. It doesn't need to exist anywhere in the world, really. It's all policy driven. It's all policy. Yeah. And I know. I mean, some people would say, "Well, it's not a systemic issue, or it's not, or it's orchestrated. It's not, it's not that way." I mean, things happen in life, though. I mean, I always call it systemic because it is it's like a system that's been.
It is, yeah.
It's been designed that way.
It's purposeful. That's why you use the word systemic, because it's a purposeful thing that they're doing. I kind of alluded to it briefly on yesterday's show, or the last show that we did. When my wife passed away, I never really had a chance to grieve, right? Because it was like I had to just throw myself. I mean, at the time my wife passed away, my son wasn't even 5 yet. So I mean, I'm like one guy doing everything, for a son that's not even 5, and trying to cope with grief and loss, and it's a lot. I mean, it's a lot, and I tried to keep up everything for about a year. That was about maybe 10 months. And then I realized, you know what, I really need to take a break. I really need to like refocus and because I mean it's just like you feel like you're burning your candle at both ends, and you just can't do it. I said on the other show I said it's that I think people assume that you just can be Superman all the time, and you can't. I mean at some point something's got to something's got to give, right? So that's why I just had to step away from my job for about a year. But unfortunately, because I did that, I get punished for that, right? Because they're clawing back my survivor's pension. So for about a year's time, I only had $400 coming in from the provincial government. Because they were clawing back everything. And, that's, I mean, it's a really tough thing to go through, loss and all that, and grief, and then having to deal with, you know, a 5-year-old son, not even, plus my own disability and everything else. You know, it's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to take on. I mean,
and for the government just to say, oh well, you know, you can do it. Here's a pink unicorn.
Yeah, one for you, because hey, you're the Superman, you're the superhero. You know, I mean, you can do everything, right? I mean,
I'm always really careful when I do emails or tweets and stuff. I try to use the language that they, you know, the government themselves use all the time. So, you know, they like to use things like targeted wraparound supports. You know, like our social network is providing targeted wraparound supports. You know, and so I'll throw that in their face and say, well, you're just clawing back my pension, which is a targeted wraparound support. You know.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, so they can spout all they want about targeted wraparound supports, and aren't we wonderful? But then they're invalidating a perfectly good targeted wraparound support and saying, oh, that doesn't matter. We'll get rid of that. We'll get rid of that one because it's not really a targeted wraparound support. It's not really one.
Or it's not or in other words, it's dignified.
It's not important. You don't actually need it. The idea that the government can take something that is an absolute, just like the sky is blue is an absolute, and just the idea that you can hold an apple up and say it's an orange, we know categorically it is not an orange. If you hold an apple up and say it's an orange, it's a falsehood. Like, we know that automatically because we know from reality, from the truth and reality of it, we can look at an apple and say that's not an orange, right? Because if we say it's an orange, we are lying to ourselves. And my point of this whole thing is the government makes policies that they're deliberately lying to themselves. They deliberately bend over backwards. They bend over backwards to deceive and lie to themselves and say that a pension is no longer a protected income. A pension is a pink unicorn because pink unicorns exist. Right?
Right.
Pink unicorns, in the eyes of the provincial government, pink unicorns are a real thing. And in the eyes of the BC Human Rights Tribunal, they say, well, so what? Pink unicorns are real. So what? Like, I'm sorry, but your response to that should be more than a so what. Like, I'm asking you legitimately, is the sky blue and is the grass green? And we all know that yes, the sky is blue and the grass is green. And we all know what an apple is. We all know what an orange is.
Yeah.
And we should all know what a pension is.
Right. And that's like
But for whatever reason, the government loves to pink unicorn stuff. But my whole point of doing this, like I said, is to realize the extent to which pink unicorns are a very real thing in government. And for the last 10 years, I've been fighting like hell to kill every single last one of those pink unicorns that are running amok. That are running amok in our BC government and are running amok in all other governments across Canada. I mean, pink unicorns have to die because you know what? Pink unicorns are not real. Pink unicorns are not real. And the government has to wake up and realize pink unicorn, you know what? They have to say pink unicorns are not real and we should not be bending over backwards to pervert things and say, you know what, the grass is blue and the sky is green and this apple is an orange. The government bends over backwards. And the worst of it is our human rights tribunals say, so what?
So
it's
what? And that's my problem.
It's almost like they want to make themselves believe that what they're saying is so true.
Yeah. And
You know,
and is
that's
it
the-
and is it so bad? Is it so bad for that for the last 10 years? The only thing I've ever wanted in these last 10 years is truth in government.
Yeah.
And that's
It's-
that's
yeah.
all I want. That's all I want is truth in government, truth from the BC Human Rights Tribunal. Like, what is truth? What is reality? If you pervert reality, if you pervert truth,
Yeah. It's not difficult. to
what's
put
the
truth-
point? What's the point of making a decision about what is discrimination and what is not discrimination? What's the point of deciding what is discrimination and what is not if you're going to ignore the truth and if you're going to pervert reality and say it doesn't matter? You get my
Yeah.
point? You get my
Yeah,
point?
Housing, the affordability, the income security. I mean, at one time, yeah, like as we talked before, and like in BC, I don't know about other provinces, which I'm sure they are because I don't really hear too much chatter about it. But in BC, the disability pensions, right? It was back in the 90s. I mean, it used to be pensions, and then like Pink Unicorn, poof, it just magically changed it.
Yeah,
it just changed.
and
from
you know why there was a pension? It's because back in the 80s and very early 90s, you know, disabilities were a respected thing.
They were.
And what's so bad about respecting something? You know.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of like the last podcast we did with Tom Puxon. We talked about, you know, respecting death. I mean, nobody wants to talk about death. That's something that nobody wants to talk about. Nobody wants to acknowledge. But whether you want to talk about it or acknowledge it or not, you still have to respect it. You know.
Yeah,
And the fact that the government doesn't respect death or they don't respect disability and the, you know, what's involved with everybody that has one, you know, it's not like some it's just like it's just a disability or it's, you know, it's just a dead spouse or, you know, whatever, like it's just slough it off like it's nothing. And you know, it's like I'm here saying it's not nothing and you're here saying it's not nothing, and everybody with a disability across the whole province and across the whole country is saying a disability and whatever is not nothing.